yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, as always, by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Most of you know that. You can check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. Check us out at Ross Tucker Pod. That's all of our shows, right? The Ross Tucker Football Podcast, which is daily, talking about the NFL. The Even Money Betting Podcast, where we talk about our NFL bets. The Fantasy Feast Podcast, which probably won't come as much of a surprise to you. We talk about fantasy football. And, of course, the College Draft Podcast, which I think is like 3 shows in one, because we talk about the big games in college football. We talk about the best prospects, in this case for the 2025 NFL Draft. And my guy, Emory Hunt, places bets against the spread in college football, which is why from time to time we will drop this feed on the Even Money Betting feed or the Ross Tucker Football Podcast feed, especially after Emory has yet another winning week here on the College Draft Podcast. Only 3 bets last week, but he hit on 2 of them, missed on 1. We'll get to those momentarily. I highly encourage you to follow Emory on social media like I do, at FBallGamePlan on Twitter. He was really kind of one of the OGs when it comes to YouTube. His page is fantastic, Football Game Plan. And then for those of you that are really into the draft, and I know there's a lot of you out there, footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. Emory's picks are always presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. You know, it's funny, Emory. We're recording this Monday morning like we always do. And before I even get into your bets from last week and your upcoming bets, I just saw a tweet from Jim Nagy, who I really like. He's the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. And he said he spoke to 4 NFL executives this past week, and all said that there's an unusually small number of sure first rounders this year. The amount of round 1 grades in most drafts is in mid-teens. Good drafts tend to have low 20s. He said based on these conversations, there's less than 10 consensus first rounders right now at this point of the fall scouting process. Obviously, there's going to be 32 first round picks. And every year they say that there's not 32 guys that have first round grades. But I guess this surprised me, Emory, just because of the number of guys that stay in school now with NIL. I mean, heck, just because of all the guys at Ohio State, I was a little surprised to hear this, because we've got guys that are staying in school more than they used to. So you would think that there'd be even more, high caliber players available in this year's draft.
It's interesting, but I'm mainly concerned with the top 10, right? And my reasoning is, and we talked about this before when we get deep into the weeds of talking about the NFL draft and what a top 5 should look like. And I always reference the 89 draft that had Aikman, Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas, Deion Sanders. You know what I'm saying? Like, those guys are top 5 talents. So for me, yeah, there may not be 15 quote unquote first round grades or 23 first round grades. I just hope the teams don't mess up the top 10, because that's what usually sets it off in terms of, okay, I may not agree with the position that Team X drafted, but at least I know this dude they took in the top 5 is a top 5 talent. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to see reaches. Like, you can get reaches outside of the top 10, which is fine, because at the end of the day, it's all about team fit. But you really can't screw up the top 5 or 10. And that's where my focus is usually going to always zero in on, with regards to the draft and who goes where. I don't care about the first round. I just want to make sure that we're doing it right by at least the top 10.
Well, and the point is, I think, is that there are, very, very unique opportunities to get special talents when you draft that high. It's kind of the only place, not the only place, but it's the best place to get truly unique talents that can be core players for a long time. And so that's rough if you have one of those top 10 picks and you whiff on it like teams do every once in a while.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, man, and just to make it sound simple for the listeners and fans out there, if you told me you have a top 10 pick of 50,000 college prospects, I get to get one of the 10 best players in the sport anywhere, right? You have one of the top 10 picks out of 50,000 eligible draft prospects, 20,000, 10,000, whatever the number is. You have 1 through 10. You cannot mess this up. Like, it should be, when we're talking about top 10 talents, we're talking about somebody that just kind of like leaps off the field at you, like a Travis Hunter, right? Well, we don't know what position he is or what position it. No, he's a top 10 talent. We just talked about pre-show Ashton Genty. Well, he plays running back. Like, every time I look up, he's averaging 10 yards a carry, 13-something touchdowns so far this year, explosive. Like, things like that leap out at you. That is clear-cut top 10 talent. So take the top 10 talent and figure everything else out with the rest of the draft and into also college free agency.
All right, let's get into some of your bets from last week. You only had 3, Emory, but you were 2-1. Your first hit, you had Illinois plus 17.5 against Penn State. They ended up losing 21-7, so they covered that 17.5. Man, it was tied 7-7, and they were going in for a touchdown to take the lead, and they had like a bad snap, 2 penalties, sack. Next thing you know, the guy misses the field goal. They were like on the 2-yard line. They didn't get any points. And so that would have helped your cause even more, but they were able to cover anyway because their defense really played pretty well.
Well, here's the thing. I'll take partial credit for that one because I saw this trickle into the shows that I'm on at CBS. People have to, realize we do this show very early on a Monday morning. I do a CBS show on Wednesday. So there's room for me to change my mind. So I changed my mind on the pick Wednesday when I did the show. I actually laid the points with Penn State on that show. And my reason was, and I said, and it sort of played out the way it kind of played out, was there was I said, this is going to be a slow chokeout. I expected Penn State to win 30-7. And we saw Penn State trick off some red zone opportunities in that game to really pull away from Illinois. So if you heard the show on Monday, you heard me take Illinois plus the points. But if you heard me on Wednesday, you heard me, you know what? After, watching more films, like, you know what? I feel like this is a game where Penn State can really, like, talent will take over. You'd heard me say lay the 17.5 with Penn State. So people will say, like, how you see comments like, oh, he's changing he's hedging, or he's giving you both. Like, bro, like, listen, early Monday morning, Wednesday, and then throughout the week, I held consistent on Penn State because, again, you have the luxury of changing your mind when you're doing these shows. So people always trying to look for some nefarious things. This is what they're doing. The books are making them, you know how people get, they're paying these guys to make them give all the picks so that way you can bet on everything. Like, nah, bro. Like, 7 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Like, chill out. But that's why I said take partial credit. Because, yeah, if you listen to this show and put the bet in when you heard the show, you nailed it. But if you heard me the rest of the week, you missed it.
Let's get to the next one, which I think was a hit for you, Emory, on multiple levels. I'm talking about you had Alabama +2, a rare home underdog were the Crimson Tide, and yet they went out and got a huge lead in this game. They were running away with it. And Jalen Milroe, I mean, I don't care what anybody says, he's a first-round pick. Just the talent alone is a first-round pick. And then Georgia storms all the way back. Give them all kinds of credit for storming back in that game in the manner in which they did. And then Alabama's still able to get it done with a 17-year-old freshman in Ryan Williams, who reclassified, basically skipped his whole senior year of high school. Couldn't pay me enough money to skip my senior year of high school, by the way. One of the best years of my life. But he's ready. Can you imagine that guy still playing high school football right now? And what that would look like for him? Very, very impressive. So anyway, you crushed it there because you took Alabama getting the points. They won the game outright. But we reposted it at Ross Tucker Pod on social media, Emory. You said back in July that you had Milroe as the best quarterback prospect in the SEC, above Beck, above Ewers, and I think he probably showed why on Saturday night.
If people watch the show, they'd be early on a lot of these draft prospect takes. Shedeur Sanders, when he was at Jackson State, you see how that's playing out now. Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward. We're early a lot, man. It may sound
Anthony
radical.
Richardson.
Anthony Richardson. It sounds wild and radical now, but people really have to come around and be like, dang, they were right. They were on it. With Milroe is just talent. It's just the fact that you can't coach what he was doing out there on the field against Georgia. It always has a breaking case of emergency type athleticism. And to piggyback on the point I just made about the Penn State game, if you listen to the show on Monday, you got Alabama at +2.5. If you listen to me the rest of the week, you heard me say Alabama money line. So you kind of double dipped and cashed both. Because I also said that Alabama would win this game by double digits. Now, it was looking pretty sweet until Georgia came back. But Bama, to me, and the reason why I felt so confident early in the week to say this was they had the better backs, better quarterback, more explosive receivers. They were just a better team at this juncture of the season than Georgia, and we couldn't really say that a couple of years ago, and now we're saying it now because it was so true, which is why I wasn't shocked by how fast Alabama got out of the blocks.
No, that was impressive all the way around. I was out watching it in Vegas. I was actually at dinner with my wife before the Raiders-Browns game the next day, and yes, I did have my phone out because I knew big things were happening and I didn't want to miss it. So she was cool with it. She was watching it too because, you knew it was such a thrilling, awesome game. The one miss, Emory, I was surprised you did this in the first place, to be honest with you, just because I would never lay 17.5 like that. But you laid 17.5 with Ole Miss. I'll give you credit for this, Emory. If you're going to miss, you might as well miss badly. And that's what happened because they lost that game outright to Kentucky 20-17. Some crazy bounces went against them late in that game.
But this is why when on the CBS Sports HQ post-game shows that we do on Saturdays and we do an early look ahead to the top 25, I was always giving Ole Miss caveats because these are the games based on who they played and Furman and all these other. Like, listen, man, yes, they're scoring a lot of points, but I need to see Ole Miss in a big spot. I thought because Georgia's offense wasn't, what people thought it was, and Ole Miss can score, they should have an easier time than Georgia did versus Kentucky. That didn't happen. That wasn't the case. And Kentucky came out there and really shook up the top 10. So now they just created room for my new favorite team, and that have been all since week 1, Army. So I'm waiting for Army and I'm waiting for Navy to do what they need to do because I want them to crash the party both.
Wow. Well, speaking of that, my game this Saturday is Navy at Air Force on CBS. Really looking forward to that one. Best team Navy's had in a while, and unfortunately, it looks like one of the worst teams Air Force has had in a while. I'll be trying to find some Labatt Blue Lights out there in Colorado. They have them because people have actually tweeted me pictures of themselves drinking Labatt Blue Lights with friends and family, living life to the power of we out there in Colorado. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Emory, we move forward to this week. Let's start with Missouri. They're getting a point on the road against Texas A&M, and Missouri has an edge rusher that's caught your eye.
Yeah, Johnny Walker Jr. I'm a big Johnny Walker guy in terms of the beverage and also the play. When you think about the player, and it's funny how we talk about position U. How about Missouri's run on defensive ends, right? They seem to always have a guy. And I feel like Johnny Walker's length and the way he collapses the pocket using that length reminds me a lot of Aldon Smith and what he was doing out there when he was with Missouri. And I feel like he's really getting it going. And this is a big game because they need to really rack up style points. And I do feel like they'll win this game. So I'm taking Missouri plus the point here is essentially a pick'em game. I like Brady Cook. I've always been a Brady Cook guy. We spoke about that on the show in the summer. Brady Cook is very underrated. Plays a lot like Andy Dalton did at TCU. Just a guy that's just going to find a way to make a way. And when you combine the stability at quarterback, what they have as an NFL prospect at receiver, and Luther Burden II, and then Johnny Walker Jr. This is a complete team on both sides of the ball. And I feel like they'll take care of business on the road.
Got it. Texas A&M always has prospects too. They always recruit so well. It's interesting. It's like they're up there among the teams, Emory, that get the least out of how well they recruit, if that makes sense. They get the least return on investment for the amount of stars they accumulate, recruiting stars, not actual college football stars.
Because they always tend to whiff on the quarterback position. And when they get it right, they win a lot of games, i.e. Johnny Manziel. And that's been their biggest bugaboo because A&M will always have backs. I mean, I know Moose Muhammad Jr. is not going through the best of times there right now, but he's a guy that could be a guy. Shamar Turner, excellent defensive tackle. They have a couple of defensive tackles, but they never get the QB position the right. They had Kyler Murray. You know what I'm saying? So, but they let him get out the door. So you gotta have to once you ace that position, it'll highlight everything else that you've done recruiting wise. I think that's where they gotta find the guy and get that position correctly.
All right, what about Emory, Iowa at Ohio State? Ohio State is laying 20.5.
This is tough, but I'm gonna lay the 20.5 with Ohio State. I still trust talent over scheme. Way too much talent everywhere. Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver. I heard this from our colleague at CBS, Beanie Wells, who was a legend at Ohio State during the summer. He talked about the type of player, Jeremiah Smith is when he was coming in. He was like, he already looks better than Marvin Harrison Jr. when he got to Ohio State. And that's saying something because Harrison Jr. was polished. And we've seen this play out so far this season with Jeremiah Smith and how dominant he's looked in just the last game, how many one-handed catches he had. So I feel like Iowa will have its opportunities because they are better offensively this year. They're in the picture. You know what I'm saying? How the playoff graphic has in the hunt. They're in the hunt offensively this year finally. But just too much talent at Ohio. So I think this will be one of those slow, elongated covers that you'll have to sweat a little bit, but Ohio State will cover in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that that's tough. Iowa's defense, and maybe they're not what they have been, but that would be tough for me to lay the 20.5 against Iowa's defense. But I don't like laying that many points, period, let alone against Iowa's defense. Anybody for Iowa jump out at you?
Cade McNamara, the quarterback, has an opportunity here to really do something against this Ohio State defense. If he can put together a strong performance and prove me wrong in terms of Ohio State winning by 20.5 points by 3 touchdowns, then that speaks volumes of some of the growth that he has made because that's been the key to their offense. The passing game has been competent. I know, there are fans that don't like McNamara, but this guy is a productive quarterback and has a chance to be on an NFL roster. So I'm looking at him mostly in this ballgame and how he's playing.
Miami is at Cal. Miami coming off that thrilling, controversial win against Va Tech last Friday night. Miami's laying 12, Emory.
What's funny about that game against Virginia Tech, Ross? Dude never really had control of the ball anyway. I don't know why everybody was like, "Oh my God, that was a catch. You got to call on the field." Like, bro, the refs got it wrong on the field. You saw the ball moving around. But anyway, I'm glad Miami got their wake up call because they were sleepwalking in that ball game against Virginia Tech. That's the Virginia Tech team we thought we were going to get from week one. And now they face a Cal team. And it was highlighted against Cal's game against Florida State a couple of weeks ago, how the quarterback position, in my opinion, they should be playing Chandler Rogers at quarterback because he's such a dual threat guy, dynamic guy, shorter guy. And that would enhance Jaden Ott's opportunities with the football in his hands, who's a tremendous tailback, NFL prospect. So Miami getting their wake-up call. We know their offense can score. Defensively, I like their defensive line. I think they go out there, business in hand, long trip from Miami to Berkeley, and they take care of business here. And I will lay the 12 points with the Hurricanes because I feel like Cam Ward is showing why he was able to overcome some adversity in that ball game, and had to come back, win, had some key runs, had some key throws, some beautiful throws. And that's what you want to see from a guy that's projected to go in the first round. So for me, Cam Ward is the outstanding quarterback to keep an eye on. Jaden Ott, the running back for Cal, very good on both ends of offense, catching the ball, running the football. If he can get going, they have a chance. But this is a game that's going to be littered with tremendous backfield talent, both quarterback and also running back.
And to be clear, you're laying the 12 with Miami, right?
Yep.
All right, laying the 12 with Miami is Emory. And then let's get to Syracuse at UNLV because there's a lot to talk about as it relates to UNLV. But for the game, UNLV is laying 4.5 points. Who do you like and what prospects are you checking out?
For Syracuse, Oronde Gasson II, the tight end, flex guy. I feel like that's someone that could be one of those move pieces at the NFL level. A flex tight end, obviously, was a receiver at first, and then they transitioned him to tight end. And Hajj Malik Williams, the quarterback for UNLV. I covered his game. I called two of his games, or three of them, when he was at Campbell, one against Georgetown and two against Monmouth. Always knew he had the talent and the ability. This is the perfect offense for him. When he was at Campbell, he was playing for, one of my favorite coaches to cover, and Mike Mentor, who was the head football coach there, former Nebraska black shirt, All-American, former Carolina Panther, great. So Hajj Malik Williams getting an opportunity in the go-go offense with Brendan Marion, and combined with what that defense has been able to do every year. UNLV now probably is starting the right guy at quarterback and getting more production out that side of the football, which enhances what they do on defense. So not only am I going to lay these 4.5 points with UNLV, I like what they're building now moving forward because it seems like this is a focused team that galvanized around Hajj Malik Williams, and it's going to be fun to watch this team play out the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's very interesting. They were super impressive against Fresno State on Saturday in Hajj Malik Williams' first start. I will say this. I've seen some comments, Emory, from some people about the Matthew Sluka situation in UNLV that I was really disappointed by. I mean, it's pretty simple. I don't care. People are saying, well, he made a mistake because he didn't get it in writing. Sure, his representative or whatever made a mistake maybe for not getting it in writing. But if someone promises you $100,000, they promise you $100,000, right? Like, I mean, so we're just saying that like a coach or whoever looking at you and making a promise, a verbal promise, a verbal agreement that oh, too bad, you're stuck there. You're the one that made the mistake because they gave you that you didn't get it in writing. I have no problem with what Sluka is doing whatsoever. He was promised something. He held up his end of the bargain. They didn't hold up theirs, and quite frankly, He's not a professional quarterback. This is his last year to get any type of financial compensation, his last year of eligibility from his talent, and I think he'll get a pretty good 1-year NIL package from some Power 4 team next year. Anyway, maybe we'll even talk about that more. I don't know that topic is going away. Check him out on social media at FBallGamePlan. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. The keg is kicked. We're all tapped out.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.